In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 college basketball games happening on March 7, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Arkansas versus Missouri. Senior night in Columbia has a different kind of charge, the sort of night where you can almost hear the crowd before you even picture the tip. Missouri comes in around 20-10 overall and 10-7 in league play, chasing that NCAA resume boost in front of a fan base that already showed how loud it can get when it stormed the court after beating Tennessee. Arkansas shows up at roughly 22-8, 12-5 in conference play, sitting in that national spotlight with a ranked label and the kind of big name that usually pulls casual bettors toward them almost by habit. That preseason idea of Missouri as a cute upset pick has quietly shifted, and the broader market has already signaled that this is no longer just a scrappy underdog story but a team that has actually earned respect with its recent form. The recent stretch explains a lot of that mood, with Missouri stacking a win over a ranked Tennessee group, then rolling Mississippi State on the road by a huge margin, then getting smacked at Oklahoma in a way that probably sharpened the focus heading into this matchup. The clash in styles adds even more flavor. Arkansas wants chaos, quick decisions, quick shots, and they are very comfortable if this feels like a pickup run for long stretches. Missouri prefers something a bit more measured, with possessions that actually mean something and a clear idea of who touches the ball and where. Their offense keeps flowing through that primary wing creator, treated like the hub of the wheel, and his mix of scoring, rebounding, and playmaking has already been rewarded with league honors for how he carried them through that Tennessee and Mississippi State swing. Playing through him at home lets Missouri lean on the energy in the building, get that extra little bump from the whistle, and keep Arkansas from turning every defensive rebound into a track meet. The roster picture, as described, is pretty straightforward. That featured wing is healthy and logging heavy minutes. Arkansas still has its headline guards and wings in the mix, including the freshman point guard known for piling up over 20 a night and setting up teammates, plus his freshman running mate on the wing, all fully involved and without any flagged injury issues in that original breakdown. Missouri is still marked as missing guard Anner Botting for the season after leg surgery, and forward Jevin Porter is noted as out with a lower leg problem that has already cost him a long stretch of games. On the Arkansas side, Carter Knox is pointed out as sidelined after meniscus surgery with no clear return time, so he is treated as a non-factor for this particular matchup. Those absences do not just shrink the bench, they also clarify the identity on both sides. Missouri trims the rotation and leans on lineups that know who they are, that trust toughness at home and calm execution late, instead of trying to be something different every night. Arkansas remains terrifying when the game gets stretched out from end to end, but without full depth they can feel just a touch lighter, a touch more exposed, if you can force them to defend longer half-court possessions instead of trading highlight plays. The emotional stack on Missouri's side is hard to ignore, with revenge for that earlier trip to Fayetteville where they hung 86 yet still left with a loss in a 94-86 shootout, plus the senior night layer, plus the sense that they still have work to do while Arkansas is already widely treated as safely in the postseason. It becomes very easy to picture Missouri not only holding up against Arkansas's offensive swings but answering them, then turning those last 4 minutes into grown-up, possession-by-possession basketball that plays right into the hands of a fired-up Mizzou Arena crowd that has been waiting all day to explode. As our first pick for this matchup, the Missouri Tigers to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The number attached to this game is clearly not shy, and the fact that it already drew some attention from both directions tells you that odds makers see a fast, high possession style and bettors recognize the same thing even as they poke at the edges. Honestly, that makes sense the moment you start listing what Arkansas has done this season on the scoreboard. They sit around the top of the country in points per night, flirting with that 90-plus range, and the efficiency is strong on the offensive end, while the defense gives up something in the neighborhood of 80, which is a polite statistical way to say they run and they are not exactly building a brick wall on the back line. The evidence is not just buried in spreadsheets. There are real games that people watched where Arkansas hung 108 on South Carolina, 99 on Texas A&M, 105 on Texas in a big stage showcase, and then dropped 94 on this same Missouri squad in their earlier meeting. Missouri has shifted more toward an offensive tilt late in the year too, even if that has flown a bit under the radar. When they get games into their comfort band, somewhere in the mid-70s or higher, their record spikes, and that earlier stretch where they beat Tennessee, hammered Mississippi State 88-64, and then went toe-to-toe in that 94-86 Fayetteville game shows how comfortable they are when the pace never really dies. Even with Boateng done for the year and Porter still out in that original snapshot, Missouri's answer was not to slow everything down and grind possessions into dust. They went with lighter, more skilled looks, giving players like Trent Burns and other rotation pieces bigger roles, which gave the staff more reasons to roll with lineups that can run, space the floor, and punish any defense that fails to get set in time. On the other side, Arkansas leans even harder into that go-mode identity. They want that freshman point guard to push off every miss. They want early clock threes. They want rim runners like Brazil sprinting to the cup, and they are perfectly willing to live with a couple blown assignments on defense if it buys them a few extra possessions. Here is the thing, that style, inside a loud building with emotions cranked up, usually brings a friendly whistle for the home side, more fouls, more free throws, and more extended late-game sequences where the clock stops but the scoring does not. That last stretch is always a bit of a projection, of course, but when you connect Arkansas's firepower and loose defense with Missouri's recent scoring surge, the smaller but quicker rotation, and the buzz of a revenge spot wrapped inside senior night, the picture that keeps forming is another wild, up-tempo SEC clash that lives in a high-scoring neighborhood rather than a slow, 70-68 type wrestling match. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Louisville versus Miami, Florida. Louisville heads down to Miami for a regular season finale that feels like a pressure check for both sides, not some quiet Saturday. Louisville brings a record in the neighborhood of 21-9 with conference play that sits around 10-7, so you can feel that mix of confidence and urgency as they chase a stronger spot in the league pecking order. Miami sits closer to 24-6 with a conference mark around 13-4, already playing like a group that knows it belongs near the top of the bracket and can smell the postseason from the Watsco Center concourse. Oddsmakers treating Louisville as a slight road favorite is a little bit of a tell, because that kind of respect does not show up for a team that is just riding vibes. It shows up when the underlying numbers are loud, when the offense travels better than the final score suggests, and when the metrics hint that the gap between perception and reality is still pretty wide. Honestly, that is the kind of situation sharp bettors circle on a board, where the road team has stumbled enough in away gyms to scare people off, but the efficiency, the spacing, and the way they string together good possessions keep popping on film and in the box score. Miami at home is no joke, and has not been for a while, with that building turning into one of those gyms where visiting teams start the game already down a couple of emotional points just from the noise and the lighting and the comfort of a team that knows every dead spot on the floor. They rebound, they play with strength, and they lean on a core group that has already been through some serious battles, which is why you can understand anyone who glances at this matchup and thinks the home side is the safe call. Here is the thing, that same reliance on a tight core can work against them in a game where the opponent keeps pushing pace in short bursts, keeps forcing switches, and keeps making that core work on every possession, both physically and mentally. Louisville, under this current staff, has leaned into an identity that is more modern and more aggressive, the kind of style that rewards teams that are comfortable taking quick good shots and stretching the floor instead of grinding every possession down to the last 3 seconds. They have shown flashes where everything clicks, stretches where the ball moves, the spacing is clean, and they look like one of the sharpest attacks in the league. But those stretches have not always lined up with their final results on the road. That is where the opportunity lives. The record outside their own arena is nothing to brag about, yet the way they create shots and pressure defenses hints at a team that can absolutely punch above its road resume in the right spot. You also have the emotional layer. Senior moments, families in the stands, players who know this might be the last true regular season stage before everything turns into win or go home territory. Miami already having a strong seed cushion can sometimes lead to a tiny bit of comfort, that subconscious half step off the gas, while Louisville still has a little more to prove and a little more to gain. It is not that Miami will coast, that group is too proud for that. It is more that Louisville has more reason to treat this like a statement instead of a celebration. The health picture adds one more wrinkle. Louisville has been managing a key guard with a nagging back concern, and Miami has had to think about rotation pieces on the wing, who are not fully secure either, so the matchup has a bit of that late-season uncertainty baked in. If that lead creator for Louisville is close to himself and the rotation holds together, the way they can spread the floor and force Miami into lateral movement rather than comfortable vertical strength becomes a real factor. That is not a guarantee. It is more of a forward-looking read on how their style matches the way Miami wants to defend in its own building. In a game that projects as competitive and emotional, with one team a touch hungrier and the market already giving them a slight nod, the side that brings that sharper edge and more portable offensive profile earns the lean on the spread. As our first pick for this matchup, the Louisville Cardinals to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The scoring side of this matchup feels like the kind of thing that gets people glued to their screens even if they do not care who actually wins. Because the way these two teams play points can stack up faster than it seems at first glance. One group is used to putting numbers on the board in a hurry with efficient looks and a steady rhythm, and the other has grown into an attack that is comfortable living in higher totals when the game opens up. You do not need a spreadsheet to see that when both teams are willing to run through their actions and avoid getting stuck in the mud, the scoreboard starts working overtime. Miami in its home gym often drifts into games where the crowd energy pulls the tempo up a bit, especially when the opponent is not afraid to shoot early in the clock. Those swings of momentum, the mini runs, the quick answers on the other end, they are the kind of things that turn a normal box score into something that looks more like a pickup game that got a little out of hand. Louisville, for its part, has leaned into a style that likes the three-point line, likes quick decisions, and does not shy away from trading baskets when the matchup allows it. Even when their defense holds its own, the overall rhythm of their games tends to favor possessions rather than slow, grinding half-court slugfests. Here is where it gets interesting. Neither defense is a total pushover. They both have stretches where they string together stops and look organized, yet neither profile screams that this is a matchup destined for a low-scoring, rock-throwing contest. Both sides are more than capable of getting to their spots, drawing help, and creating clean looks, and when you mix that with late-season shot-making confidence, you get a recipe that tilts more toward fireworks than a sleepy Saturday. Fans love that kind of game, broadcasters love that kind of game, and honestly, the players usually do too, because nobody hates a day where the rim starts to look like a laundry basket. Late game dynamics matter as well. If the score stays within reach for either side, the usual closing sequence starts to lean into fouls, free throws, and quick timeouts, all of which help push a total upward. A foul here, a couple of bonus trips there, maybe a last-second heave that banks in. Those little things are the difference between a modest total and one that sneaks into a much higher range. It only takes a few of those possessions, especially in conference games where coaches refuse to wave the white flag early. There is always a path where nerves show up, shots rim out, and this turns into something like a more modest scoring result that leaves offensive fans grumbling. That can happen in college hoops at any time. Still, when you step back and look at how these two teams generally prefer to play, how comfortable they are in faster stretches, and how their strengths lean more toward scoring than smothering, the more natural script leans toward a game where both sides find their rhythm. The expectation tilts toward an entertaining, lively total rather than a low-ceiling slog. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Vanderbilt versus Tennessee. This matchup feels like one of those regular season finales that everyone circles weeks ahead. In-state rivals, loud building, tension hanging in the air before warm-ups even start. Tennessee walks in with a record that reflects a full season of battles in the league, a little scarred but clearly seasoned, while Vanderbilt shows up with a better overall mark on paper and a reputation for putting points on the board in a hurry. The contrast in styles jumps out right away. Vanderbilt prefers a faster, freer rhythm where that offense can breathe. Tennessee is much more comfortable in a game that feels like a tug of war in the half court, and that clash of personality often tells you who ends up smiling late. The numbers do back that up. Vanderbilt sits among the top scoring groups in the country, while Tennessee leans on a defense that keeps opponents in the high 60s and a rebounding edge that consistently tilts possessions in their favor, and that combination quietly wears on teams possession after possession. The earlier meeting in Nashville already gave us a sneak preview of what happens when these two worlds collide. Vanderbilt usually turns home games into track meets, but Tennessee dragged that one into a 69-65 grinder where their defense and glass work dictated almost every important stretch after halftime. The interesting part is that nothing about this setting makes life easier for Vanderbilt. The rematch flips to Knoxville, last home date of the regular season, the crowd locked in, and Tennessee still holding meaningful seeding goals in both the conference bracket and the national picture, which tends to crank up focus on every box out and every closeout. Vanderbilt's defense, while capable of timely stops, simply does not live in the same category as its offense. Opponents find more comfort against them than they do against Tennessee, and against a physical, board-hungry group in orange that keeps field goal percentages on the low side and chases shooters off the arc. That gap feels like it grows larger the longer the game goes. Late in these kinds of rivalry games, the team that can turn misses into second chances, control tempo without rushing, and keep its nerve when the building is shaking usually ends up not just winning but separating enough to matter for people watching the spread. And Tennessee checks more of those boxes here, especially with the matchup history and stylistic edge already on film. As our first pick for this matchup, the Tennessee Volunteers to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Total scoring in this matchup sounds like an automatic green light for offense lovers at first glance, because when you hear Vanderbilt this season, you almost instinctively think of big numbers and long scoring runs. The raw scoring profile for the Commodores supports that image. One of the most explosive attacks in the country and an average in the high 80s makes you picture a game that feels more like a pickup run than a structured college contest. And sportsbooks usually respond by hanging a number that dares you to believe the fireworks keep coming. The wrinkle here is that Tennessee sits on the other side of that conversation, and this defense does not just tolerate a track meet, it actively resists it, holding opponents to barely above 40% from the field and around the low 30s from three, then finishing possessions with elite rebounding that cuts off easy second chance points. Fewer clean looks and fewer extra possessions mean fewer scoring outbursts, and that shows up in rhythm. Transition chances dry up when the first shot is contested and the rebound is swallowed up, and suddenly both teams are stuck figuring out half-court sets against a set defense where every cut and screen is scouted. The first meeting between these two already told that story in pretty blunt fashion. Instead of the kind of shootout Vanderbilt often enjoys, the total landed at 134 points, well below the sort of expectation that usually follows their brand, which is a strong hint about who actually controls the style when these programs share the floor. The timing of this rematch adds another layer. Final regular season game, tournament seeding on the line, coaches leaning into film-driven adjustments rather than chaos. And that usually means longer possessions, more deliberate shot selection, and a willingness to grind through late clock situations rather than let the game get stretched end to end. Endgame fouling will always hover as a wild card that can nudge a score higher, free throws piling up in the final minute or two. But the core profile here is a Tennessee defense that slows opponents, a rebounding edge that limits clean runs, and a recent head-to-head result that already showed this pairing prefers the low 140s or below far more than the kind of total that screams shootout. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Florida versus Kentucky. Florida walks into Lexington looking like the finished product everyone expected, defending champs, shining near the top of the rankings, and fresh off a statement kind of win that locked up the league title in style. They play fast, they score in bunches, they vacuum up rebounds, and the analytics crowd loves them with top-tier marks on both sides of the ball and in tempo. That is the kind of profile that usually means you are laying a serious number on the road and feeling pretty good about it. This spot feels different once you zoom in, because this does not really set up like some one-sided demolition. It feels a lot more like a cramped knife fight where every possession is a little messy. Kentucky has lived in that sweet spot where the offense is good enough to scare anyone and the defense invites chaos, so their games turn wild in a hurry. They already went into Gainesville catching a big number, kept it close enough to cash, and walked out having proved they can handle this version of Florida for long stretches. Now the script flips a bit, with Florida carrying the trophy into a true road environment and Kentucky getting that same giant in their own building with a fan base that treats evenings like this almost like a holiday. Kentucky is not fully loaded, and that part matters. Jalen Lowe is shut down for the year. Cam Williams is still dealing with that foot and has not made it back. Jaden Quaintance remains out with knee trouble, and Braden Hawthorne is parked on a red shirt. The funny thing is that the shortage has forced a cleaner rotation, and it has tightened the focus around guys such as Denzel Aberdeen, Otega Owe, and Malachi Moreno, who keep this offense humming even when the bench is thinner than planned. Florida still has the heavier punch, nobody is denying that, but it is one thing to be the stronger team and a slightly different challenge to cover a chunky spread in a fired-up building against a home group that plays at this speed. With Kentucky chasing a bit of redemption, feeding off that crowd, and already having shown it can stay within shouting distance in the first meeting, those extra points sitting beside the home name start to look more like a gift than a warning label. As our first pick for this matchup, the Kentucky Wildcats to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Florida games have turned into track meets all season, with the Gators piling up points, piling up rebounds, and constantly creating extra trips down the floor by attacking the glass and pushing off both misses and makes. Look at their recent runs on the scoreboard. Big numbers against Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, Ole Miss. It reads almost like a list of video game sessions rather than normal college box scores. Kentucky has leaned into that same vibe, and honestly, their score lines have become must-watch material for anyone who likes the little digits rolling over on the bottom ticker. Nights where they hang big totals on league opponents have become routine, even with key pieces missing, so the identity is pretty clear. They are willing to race, they are willing to trade jumpers, and they are not shy about firing early in the clock. Put the styles next to each other and you end up with a recipe that leans hard toward offense, a high-end Florida attack that wants to run right into a Kentucky defense that is solid enough but not really built to shut down a team like this for 40 straight minutes, especially with that thinner depth on the perimeter and up front because of the Lowe, Williams, and Quaintance absences. On the flip side, Kentucky does not exactly turtle up either. Their own offense plays free and loose, and in this building they have already shown they can light up high major visitors when they get comfortable. History between these programs lines up with the same story. Recent meetings have turned into free-flowing, high-scoring affairs, including that first clash this season in Gainesville that looked more like an open gym shootout than a grind. If this one stays close into the final minutes, and there is every reason to think it will stay competitive, you can already picture the late-game pattern, long possessions that still end in quick shots, aggressive drives, and that familiar parade to the foul line that nudges a high score into the kind of number that makes the overcrowd grin. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. St. Louis versus George Mason. St. Louis comes into this one feeling like the team that has been bullying the rest of the schedule all year, a real heavyweight stepping into a gym that usually belongs to George Mason. They are sitting at a record of 27-3, and that kind of mark is not just a vanity stat. It usually means habits are sharp, rotations are tight, and confidence is baked into everything they do. The scoring pops first, because putting up around 90 points a night while still looking composed is not normal. It is the kind of thing that wears opponents down possession by possession. The way they get there matters too. They shoot over 51% from the field and better than 40% from deep, which means they do not need wild hot streaks to get separation. They just run their stuff, find clean looks, and let the math slowly suffocate the other side. At the same time, they hold opponents under 68 points and under 37% shooting, so you are looking at one of those rare groups that attacks at full speed on offense but still treats defense like a point of pride. That is how you end up with average winning margins hovering around 20 points or more, not because every game is a blowout from the opening tip, but because the pressure stacks up, and once the dam breaks, it breaks fast. The numbers under the hood back up the eye test. Top tier in offensive efficiency, top tier in defensive efficiency, and a tempo that lives in the low 70s in terms of possessions. All of that paints the picture of a team that likes to get up the floor and keep you reacting instead of thinking. It is a bit like playing a pickup game against that one group that never gets tired. They are not just fast, they are organized while being fast, and that combination is brutal over 40 minutes. George Mason, to their credit, does not exactly roll out the welcome mat. They sit on a strong record of around 22-8, which says they are used to winning at home and used to winning in their own style. That style is slower, more deliberate, with possessions grinding in the mid-60s, and games where their comfort zone lives in the low 70s on offense and high 60s on defense. If St. Louis wants to turn this into a track meet, George Mason would rather treat it like a long chess match where every move is measured. Here is the thing, though, even with that slower rhythm, the matchup edges lean in some pretty clear directions. St. Louis brings more length and more muscle on the glass, and the rebounding gap they create, around double-digit margins compared to what they allow, gives them extra chances and steals some from the opponent. Over the course of a game, those extra possessions feel small in the moment, but they pile up the way late fees do on a forgotten bill. Add in that George Mason has been wobbling a bit, dropping 4 of the last 5 coming into this spot, and you get the sense that their margin for error is thinner than usual. Health tilts things as well. St. Louis is essentially at full strength outside of a forward who has been sitting the whole year, so their main rotation pieces are available. George Mason is working around a guard lost for the season and another dealing with an ankle issue, which is not ideal when you are about to see a relentless backcourt attack that wants to push pace and pressure the ball. So while the building will back the home team and the slower tempo might tempt some people to think this stays tight wire to wire, the combination of efficiency, depth, and control of the glass from the visitors points in a pretty specific direction by the time the final buzzer hits. As our first pick for this matchup, the St. Louis Billikens to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. One team loves to press the gas, the other prefers to tap the brakes, and somewhere between those two impulses the number of points is going to land. St. Louis plays with one of the faster tempos in the country, and when a group that efficient decides to run, the court feels shorter, the clock feels longer, and the scoreboard starts moving in bigger jumps instead of small nudges. Their offense is not just fast, it is clean. With that combination of strong overall shooting and high-level accuracy from 3, nearly every trip can produce something decent, and even a couple of empty possessions rarely slow them down for long. You can almost feel the emotional swing for opponents. You get 1 stop, maybe 2, and then 3 bags of points come right back at you in a row. Games involving a team like that tend to live in higher scoring ranges, not because every possession is chaos, but because the average quality of shot is so high that the points add up almost quietly. George Mason brings a different flavor, but it still leans toward scoring more than people sometimes expect from a slower team. They usually sit around the mid-70s in points per game, shoot close to 47.5%, and they can hit from outside and crash the glass well enough to extend possessions. They also get to the free throw line at a healthy rate, which is huge in this context, because clock stoppages with free throws are one of the most reliable ways to push a game toward a higher total. So while their tempo is calmer, their trips are often productive, and that is an underrated driver of final scoring. Computer projections that model pace, efficiency, and scoring patterns see this kind of matchup and tend to land on a combined number that nudges slightly above the main expectation. That is not magic, it is just what happens when you plug in one of the most efficient, fast-playing offenses in the country against a solid, efficient attack that lives at the line and does not waste too many possessions. And that is before you even talk about the endgame, where a lead sitting at that awkward 2 or 3 possession window can trigger fouls, more free throws, and a few extra points that did not seem likely halfway through the second half. Recent games for St. Louis tell a similar story. Totals on their board have often sat in higher ranges, and the way those games have actually played out has usually justified that expectation, with scores creeping into those upper bands even when the first few minutes feel slower. George Mason, facing a transition attack of this caliber, will be asked to sprint back, communicate, and still execute their half-court sets, and that constant physical and mental strain tends to open up more scoring on both ends as legs get heavy. So even if the home team manages to slow things for stretches, the blend of pace from one side, efficiency from both, and the very real chance of extended late-game free throw sequences points toward a game that finishes above a typical scoring profile for a grindy contest. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.